Tonight, we descend beneath the Vatican into a world the public was never meant to see. Beneath the marble and gold lies a hidden city of stone, where ancient streets run under altars and tunnels vanish into darkness. These are not just relics of the past, but the guarded veins of an empire, sealed away for centuries under law and silence. For generations, the Vatican has been the heart of faith, but beneath its holy image are catacombs older than the church itself, pagan shrines entombed beneath Christian marble, and locked doors that no living pope has dared to open. Some passages end in darkness. Others lead to chambers where whispers say the most dangerous treasures in history still wait. This isn't the history you learned in school. These are the secrets they chose to bury, places where faith, politics, and power collided, and where the truth was hidden behind gates of iron and walls of stone. So, before you think this is just another legend, remember this: what lies beneath the Vatican is not just the past, it's the part of history we were never meant to uncover. Like the video, subscribe, because tonight we go under the Vatican. And once you've seen what's down there, you'll never look at it the same way again. Beneath the marble floors of St. Peter's Basilica, where millions of footsteps echo each year, there is another world most will never see. Down there, far below the sunlight that filters through stained glass, lies a city of stone, shadow, and silence. A place so restricted that only a handful of people in history have ever walked its hidden paths in full. For the rest of us, it is a forbidden dream, a place whispered about in half-truths and guarded like the most precious relic in Christendom. Imagine walking into the heart of the Vatican. You see the vast square, the towering columns, the bronze canopy that arches above the high altar. It all feels timeless, unshakable, as if it has always been there. But beneath it is a truth far older than the church itself, a truth buried under centuries of faith, politics, and secrecy. If you could peel away the floors stone by stone, you would find an entire Roman necropolis, streets, and tombs frozen in time. These are not dusty ruins, forgotten by history. They are preserved so perfectly that it feels as if the people who once walked there could return at any moment. The Vatican admits part of this is real. They call it the scavi, the excavations. A few carefully chosen visitors each day are allowed to descend into these depths with a guide. They walk past ancient walls and faded frescoes. They see tombs of the wealthy and the humble, carved with symbols from a time when Christianity was still young and dangerous. And at the very centre, they are shown what is said to be the resting place of St. Peter himself, the apostle who, according to tradition, was crucified in Rome nearly 2,000 years ago. But even that glimpse is only a fraction. The public route is tightly controlled. The lighting is dim and focused on specific areas. Doors appear in the shadows but remain locked. Passages curve away into darkness, leading to rooms no visitor will ever step inside. Guards stand silent at certain points, watching, making sure no one wanders off. What lies beyond those locked gates? The Vatican does not say. Legends have grown in the absence of answers. Some believe there are chambers filled with relics so old they predate the church entirely. Others speak of hidden burial sites of popes, saints, and perhaps even figures from Rome's pagan past. There are stories of sealed tunnels stretching far beyond Vatican walls, connecting to other parts of Rome or even further. A few whisper about rooms that hold artifacts which, if revealed, could shake the foundations of modern history. Whether these tales are truth or myth, one thing is certain: the ground beneath St. Peter's is more than soil and stone. It is a vault of human memory, a layered archive of civilizations, beliefs, and secrets. Every step above is a step over the buried past, over a world that remains locked away, as if the Vatican itself is guarding not just history, but a version of history it alone has chosen to tell. There is a rule in the Vatican that few people outside its walls ever think about. It is a law written not on public signs, but in the hidden codes of permission and access. It says that while visitors may see certain parts of what lies beneath, the rest will remain closed, sealed, and silent. This is not simply for preservation or safety, at least not in the way most people imagine. It is about control, about deciding exactly what the world is allowed to see and what must remain forever in shadow. If you take the official underground tour, you are led down narrow stone steps into the cool air of the excavations. You see a small section of ancient tombs, the flicker of electric light revealing faded frescoes. The guide explains the history in careful words, pointing out details that have been approved for sharing. But every so often, the path is interrupted by a door of iron or wood, firmly locked. You notice passages leading away into darkness, but your guide never speaks of them. The group moves on. Questions are met with polite smiles and vague answers about areas still under study, or sections not safe for visitors. The truth is that most of the underground Vatican has never been shown to the public. Some of it is mapped, most of it is not. There are corridors that have been bricked shut for so long that no one in living memory has walked them, rooms whose entrances were covered over and disguised to look like solid walls. Whole sections exist only in whispers among those who have reason to go there, and even they speak cautiously. In the early 1900s, excavations under the basilica uncovered far more than expected. Teams of workers found chambers and artifacts that were documented briefly and then vanished from the record. Some of the people involved later claimed they had seen things they were told never to speak of again, and they didn't. In a city where silence can be a form of survival, the unspoken is often more telling than the truth. The Vatican says secrecy is necessary to protect delicate relics and preserve the dignity of the dead. Yet the silence feels heavier than that. Heavy like the air in a sealed room, untouched for centuries. Heavy like the weight of something that, if exposed, might change how we understand not just the Church, but the history of the entire world. Those who have been granted rare access beyond the public zones often emerge saying little, but their eyes say enough. They describe spaces so vast it feels like walking into another city, an entire hidden Vatican beneath the one we know. They speak of locked chambers with inscriptions in languages few can read, of ancient remains resting in places that appear untouched by time, of artifacts that seem out of place in a Christian city. And yet, for all the wonder and the mystery, the doors stay shut, the law and the silence hold. The Vatican allows the world just enough to believe it has seen the depths, while the real depths remain hidden, perhaps waiting for a day that may never come. There are places under the Vatican where even the echoes seem to hesitate before returning. Stone corridors so narrow your shoulders almost scrape the walls, ceilings low enough that you must bow your head. The air is cool and damp, carrying the faint smell of earth and something older, something that has been here far longer than the church above. In these depths, stories are not told loudly. They are whispered, passed from one person to another, as if saying them too clearly might make the tunnels themselves listen. The whispers come from those who have reason to be here. Monks who tend to the ancient crypts. Guards whose patrols lead them down staircases the public will never see. Archaeologists called in to examine a newly opened space, only to find themselves working under strict orders of silence. Their accounts rarely appear in official reports, yet their words pass quietly through corridors of both stone and secrecy. They speak of tunnels that should not exist, according to the Vatican's own maps. Passages leading away from the known excavations, twisting deeper into the rock, sometimes narrowing until they disappear entirely, other times opening into rooms so large it is impossible to believe they were forgotten. One former worker described finding a set of steps carved into the bedrock that descended into darkness far below the level of the catacombs. At the bottom was a corridor lined with niches, each holding a stone urn marked with symbols no one on the team could identify. Before they could explore further, officials arrived. The site was closed, and the entire area was sealed behind a reinforced wall. Another account tells of a guard following the sound of water deep underground, only to discover an underground stream flowing through a chamber filled with Roman-era statues. Days later, the entrance to that section was bricked up, its location erased from official routes. Even archaeologists working with permission speak cautiously. They mention strange architectural styles appearing deep in the ground, styles that do not match any known period of Roman or Christian construction. Some chambers have walls made of a stone not native to Rome, polished so smooth that light seems to slide across them without reflection. When asked where the stone came from, no one answers. The Vatican's official position is that many of these stories are exaggerations or misunderstandings, the natural result of old ruins, shifting foundations, and incomplete historical records. But the quiet tone in which the people who have been there tell their stories makes it hard to dismiss them. They are not selling a myth. They are describing something they have seen with their own eyes. The most unsettling part is that the tunnels spoken of in these whispers rarely lead back to familiar ground. They go somewhere else, somewhere deeper, and no one, not even the people who have been there, seems certain just how far they go or what lies at the end. It is as if beneath the Vatican there is another Vatican, one built for no visitors at all. Long before the echo of church bells filled the air above Rome, the ground where the Vatican now stands was a place of death, not worship. This was not the heart of Christianity. It was a Roman necropolis, a city of the dead, built for the wealthy, the powerful, and the pagan. Imagine a long, sunlit road lined with tombs, each one carefully constructed to honor the families buried inside. The air would have been thick with the scent of burning incense and fresh flowers left by those paying respects. Statues of gods and spirits guarded the entrances, their stone eyes watching over the dead for eternity. This was the Via Cornelia, a burial street running along the slope of the Vatican Hill. In ancient times, burial grounds were kept outside the main city, so this area was distant from the hustle of the Roman Forum. Families came here to build elaborate mausoleums, filled with colourful frescoes and inscriptions meant to keep memories alive. These tombs were not silent places of mourning. They were built to be visited, to be walked among, to remind the living of the legacies left behind. Among the pagan families buried here were those who followed Rome's official gods, but also people who worshipped older, stranger deities. You would have seen symbols of Jupiter and Venus carved into marble, but also mysterious markings from cults that came to Rome from the far edges of its empire. Some tombs were decorated with images of the afterlife, as the Romans imagined it, a shadowy place across a river guarded by spirits. Others were filled with scenes of banquets and music, as if death were simply another kind of celebration. By the 1st century, this quiet slope began to take on another layer of meaning. Stories say that after the crucifixion of Peter, the apostles' followers brought his body here to be buried in secret, somewhere among the pagan tombs. At that time, Christianity was not the dominant faith of Rome, but a dangerous movement watched with suspicion. Hiding a martyr's grave in the middle of a busy necropolis was a clever way to protect it. If anyone came searching, it would be just one grave among hundreds. Centuries later, when Christianity rose to power, this same ground took on a new purpose. The necropolis was slowly buried beneath layers of earth and stone. Pagan tombs were covered, sealed, and forgotten. In their place, churches began to rise. Over time, the old burial road disappeared beneath the foundations of the new faith. The Roman city of the dead became the invisible foundation for the Vatican we see today. But the past never truly disappears. Deep beneath the marble floors and towering columns of St. Peter's Basilica, the remains of that ancient necropolis still lie in place, silent and waiting. The tombs of Rome's powerful still keep their watch, hidden beneath the very heart of the Christian world, as if reminding anyone who dares to look that the Vatican was built not just on faith, but on the bones of a far older world. Beneath the great bronze canopy of St. Peter's Basilica, under the place where the Pope himself stands to deliver Mass, there is a road no one above can see. It is not a road of the living anymore, though once it was busy with footsteps, carts, and the quiet processions of mourners. This is the ancient Via Cornelia, sometimes called the Emperor's Road, and it still lies hidden under the altar as if time itself forgot to erase it. In the days of the Roman Empire, this road was the lifeline of the necropolis on Vatican Hill. It stretched out like a spine, with tombs rising along both sides in perfect rows. The tombs were grand, built from marble and brick, decorated with carvings, inscriptions, and bright frescoes. They told stories in stone about the people inside, politicians, merchants, soldiers, and families who could afford to buy their place in the eternal city of the dead. Some tombs displayed the proud faces of the buried in carved relief. Others showed mythological scenes meant to guide the soul into the afterlife. The road was more than a path to the graves. It was a meeting point between the living and the dead. Relatives would walk here carrying offerings, speaking to the names carved in stone as though the departed could still hear them. Priests of old Roman religions performed rituals along the way, calling on the gods to protect the resting souls. If you had walked here in the 2nd century, you would have heard the quiet murmur of prayers in Latin, the soft crackle of incense burners, and the faint sound of sandals on stone. Today, the Emperor's Road is sealed away from public view, hidden beneath layers of history. It was rediscovered during the mid-20th century excavations that sought to confirm the location of St. Peter's tomb. Archaeologists working by lamplight found themselves standing on this perfectly preserved street, as if stepping through a doorway into another world. The walls still bore traces of their original paint. Some of the inscriptions were so clear they could still be read aloud. The most remarkable thing is how close this pagan road lies to the most sacred space in Catholicism. Just meters above it stands the main altar, and beyond that, the dome that draws millions of pilgrims each year. The Emperor's Road runs directly below, silent and unseen, a reminder that the foundation of the Vatican is literally built over the roads of ancient Rome. The church allows only small sections of the road to be viewed during the tightly controlled scavi tours. Visitors walk along narrow paths, guided carefully, their eyes catching only glimpses of the tombs in the dim light. But the road itself stretches further than they are allowed to go, disappearing into darkness. Where it leads, and what else lies along it, remains a question the Vatican does not rush to answer. Perhaps it is simply history layered upon history. Or, perhaps, as some suspect, the Emperor's Road still guards secrets the world is not yet meant to see. Deep beneath the high altar of St. Peter's Basilica, past the glittering mosaics and towering marble columns, lies a place wrapped in legend, devotion, and controversy. This is where the Vatican says the bones of the Apostle Peter rest. For nearly 2,000 years, believers have made pilgrimages here, kneeling in prayer above the spot where the first pope is said to be buried. But a question has always lingered in the shadows. Is it really him? The story begins in the 1st century. According to tradition, Peter was crucified in Rome during the reign of Emperor Nero, around the year 64. Early Christian writings say his followers recovered his body and buried it in a simple grave along the Vatican Hill, in the middle of the Roman necropolis. For them, it was a sacred act, carried out quietly to avoid the attention of Roman authorities who hunted their faith. Over time, the site became a hidden place of worship, marked only by small symbols scratched into stone. Centuries later, when Christianity became the dominant religion of the empire, Emperor Constantine ordered a great basilica to be built over Peter's resting place. This construction meant burying the pagan necropolis under tons of earth and stone. The modest grave was encased in marble and placed directly beneath the new altar, a gesture meant to honour the apostle and declare Rome as the centre of the Christian world. For over a millennium, no one saw the tomb again. It remained sealed, a mystery under layers of history. Then, in the 1940s, Pope Pius XII ordered an excavation under the basilica. Working in cramped tunnels by lamplight, archaeologists uncovered the remains of the ancient necropolis. They eventually reached what appeared to be Peter's grave, an area marked by a red wall covered with Christian graffiti, some of which read, "Peter is here." Inside, they found bones, but not where they expected them. The bones were discovered in a small niche nearby, wrapped in purple and gold cloth, as if they had been moved at some point in the past. The Vatican announced that these were indeed the remains of St. Peter, but not everyone agreed. Some scientists who examined the bones noted they were missing parts, and some fragments did not seem to belong to the same person. Others pointed out that the bones were not found in the original grave, raising questions about when and why they were moved. The debate has continued ever since, with some calling it the most important archaeological find in Christian history, and others warning that faith and evidence are not the same thing. To this day, the supposed bones of Peter are kept deep underground, shown only to a select few. Pilgrims still come to pray above them, their belief unchanged by any academic dispute. Whether the bones truly belong to the apostle or to someone else entirely may never be proven, but the mystery only adds to the sense that under the Vatican, history is not just preserved, it is guarded, shaped, and sometimes kept just beyond the reach of certainty. When Christianity rose to power in Rome, it did not simply replace the old pagan world. In many places, it built directly on top of it, both in stone and in spirit. The Vatican Hill is perhaps the most striking example of this. Beneath its towering basilica and marble floors, evidence suggests that entire pagan shrines were not demolished, but carefully entombed, sealed beneath layers of Christian construction. It is as if the old gods were not erased, only hidden. In the early centuries of the Church, destroying a pagan temple was not always the most practical choice. These structures were solid, expensive, and often beautifully crafted from imported stone. To tear them down would have been a waste of both time and resources. Instead, the easier solution was to bury them. Covering a shrine with soil and building something new over it transformed the space into a Christian site, while quietly ensuring that whatever lay beneath would remain untouched. Archaeological hints of this practice have been found under and around the Vatican. During mid-20th century excavations, workers uncovered fragments of ornate columns and carved reliefs that did not match any known Christian design. Some were decorated with symbols of gods like Apollo, Jupiter, and Venus, their details still sharp despite centuries in the dark. Others appeared to be parts of altars, their surfaces stained by the ashes of long-extinguished sacrifices. These were not the scattered remains of random ruins. They seemed to belong to complete structures, as if the rest still lay buried beyond the excavated walls. One particularly intriguing discovery was a section of flooring made from coloured marble, arranged in a geometric pattern common in Roman temples. It was found far beneath the basilica, perfectly preserved, as though it had been locked away deliberately. No Christian markings were present, and no record exists of it being repurposed for church use. The floor simply sat there, silent, under centuries of weight. Some historians believe this practice of entombing pagan sites served a symbolic purpose. By building the new faith directly over the old, the Church could present itself as both the conqueror and inheritor of Rome's spiritual authority. Pilgrims would come to worship Christ, never realizing they stood above the sacred spaces of gods once worshipped with equal devotion. The most fascinating part is that these buried shrines may still exist in their entirety. If the sealed chambers were ever opened, the statues might still stand in their original places, the altars intact, the walls painted with scenes of forgotten myths. But the Vatican shows no interest in such an excavation. Perhaps it is seen as unnecessary, or perhaps there is a quiet understanding that some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. For now, The temples to gods long forgotten remain deep in the earth, preserved in darkness. Above them, the rituals have changed. The prayers have new names, and the marble is carved with crosses instead of sun discs. But the old gods still rest there, hidden under Christian stone, as if waiting for someone to remember their names. Beneath the streets of Rome, far below the traffic and the noise, there is another city. It is not a city of light or sound, but of shadows and silence. This is the City of the Dead, a sprawling network of catacombs carved into the earth centuries ago. These tunnels stretch for miles in every direction, some running beneath neighborhoods, others beneath fields, and some vanishing into the deep foundations of Vatican territory. The catacombs began as humble burial sites for early Christians, Jews, and even some pagans. In the first centuries of the Common Era, burial within the city walls was forbidden, so communities carved their cemeteries underground, creating winding corridors lined with niches for the dead. Each niche was sealed with a slab of stone or clay, often marked with the name of the person inside, a simple cross, or a short blessing. In some places, the walls were decorated with colourful frescoes depicting biblical stories or symbols of hope, painted with a faith that refused to die even in the face of persecution. Walking through these passages is like stepping back into a world that never fully disappeared. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of earth and age. Your footsteps echo softly, and every wall you pass holds countless names, a silent congregation of generations gone. Some corridors are wide enough for two people to walk side by side, but others are so narrow you have to turn your body sideways to pass. The deeper you go, the darker it becomes, until the light of your torch or lamp is the only thing keeping the shadows from swallowing you. Most catacombs are well mapped today, but there are sections the maps avoid. In certain places, the tunnels seem to end abruptly at walls of rough brick, but there are stories that these walls were built later, hiding passages that continue toward the Vatican. Some claim that during the earliest days of the Church, these hidden routes allowed Christians to move secretly between the catacombs and the growing sacred site on Vatican Hill. Whether for safety or secrecy, the connection was said to be real. There are also older tunnels that predate Christianity entirely, their origins uncertain. Archaeologists have found chambers with designs and symbols that do not match Roman style, leading to speculation that they may have been adapted from even more ancient structures. If true, it would mean the City of the Dead rests partly on the foundations of a city that came before Rome itself. The Vatican acknowledges the existence of catacombs under its land, but keeps their full extent undisclosed. It is said that some are unstable, some flooded, and others simply too dangerous to explore. But the mystery of where they lead fuels endless theories. Do they connect to secret chambers under the basilica? Do they hold relics long forgotten? For now, the City of the Dead remains a place where history, faith, and mystery intertwine. Above, life goes on as usual. But deep below, the dead still keep their watch, and some corridors may lead far deeper into Vatican secrets than anyone is willing to admit. In the early centuries of Rome, when Christianity was still a crime punishable by death, faith came at the highest possible price. Those who refused to worship the Roman gods or bow to the emperor's authority were branded traitors and enemies of the state. Many were arrested, tortured, and executed in brutal public spectacles meant to send a message to anyone who might follow their beliefs. Yet, for the Christians of that time, death was not the end. Hidden far beneath the city, away from the jeering crowds, the bodies of these martyrs found their final rest in secret graves that still lie in darkness today. These burials were acts of defiance as much as devotion. Families and fellow believers risked their own lives to retrieve the bodies of the executed, often under the cover of night. They carried them through the streets in silence, sometimes bribing guards or slipping past patrols, until they reached the safety of underground chambers. Here, in the cool, still air of the catacombs, the martyrs were laid to rest with quiet prayers and the sign of the cross traced in the dim glow of oil lamps. Some of these graves were marked with simple symbols, a fish carved into the stone or the Greek letters chi and rho intertwined, representing Christ. Others bore no name at all, either because it was too dangerous to reveal their identity or because the body could not be recognized after the execution. Over time, these sites became places of pilgrimage for the early Christian community, where believers would gather to remember the courage of those who had died for their faith. They would pray beside the tombs, leaving small tokens like bread, oil, or flowers as signs of respect. Many of these burial places remain hidden from the public even now. While some catacombs are open to visitors, the Vatican and other authorities have sealed off certain sections, often citing safety concerns. Yet those who have seen them describe rows of simple niches filled with bones, each one a silent testament to someone who refused to renounce their faith. The air in these places feels heavy, not just with age, but with the weight of countless stories that will never be fully told. Over the centuries, the Church preserved the memory of many martyrs by naming them saints and building altars in their honour. Relics believed to be their remains were moved to chapels and reliquaries, displayed for veneration. But the original graves, deep in the earth, still hold a different kind of power. They are untouched by centuries of ceremony, closer to the raw courage and suffering of the moment. To stand in one of these shadowed chambers is to feel the past pressing in around you. The silence is absolute, broken only by the faint sound of your own breathing. The stone walls seem to hold the memory of whispered prayers spoken here long ago. These are not just graves, they are the hidden foundations of a faith that refused to die, carved into the darkness by hands that believed the truth was worth everything, even life itself. Beneath the Vatican, there is a place where the ground itself feels like it is trying to confuse you. It is a twisting, turning maze of stone passages, some so narrow you have to press your back to one wall to slip through. The air changes from cool to damp, from still to strangely moving, as if unseen currents are guiding you deeper. This is the underground labyrinth, a network of corridors that have grown over centuries, layer upon layer, until even those who guard it admit they do not know where it all leads. Parts of the labyrinth are well documented. These are the paths tourists will never see, but which appear on the Vatican's restricted maps. They connect known chambers, storage vaults, and parts of the old necropolis. Electric lights have been strung along some of these tunnels, though the glow barely reaches the edges, leaving dark corners where the stone swallows the light. Here, the walls are carved from ancient Roman masonry, worn smooth by time, and the passage of countless feet. Then there are the passages that appear on no map. Some were discovered accidentally, when workers repairing one section of wall noticed a crack large enough to squeeze through. Inside, they found corridors that curved away into complete darkness, with no sign of where they ended. Others were revealed during archaeological digs, only to be bricked up again when their stability was questioned, or when they seemed to lead somewhere officials decided not to explore further. These unmapped routes are the ones that inspire the most speculation, because no one outside the tightest circles knows what lies beyond. Stories from those who have gone deeper speak of paths that loop back on themselves, staircases that descend for so long it feels like you must be below the level of the river, and sudden openings into vast chambers with ceilings lost in the dark. In some places, the architecture changes abruptly. You might walk through a corridor built with neat Roman brick and then step into one lined with enormous stone blocks of a style older than Rome itself. The purpose of these older passages is unknown, but they feel different, as if they were not made for ordinary people to use. The danger of the labyrinth is not just getting lost. Some tunnels have unstable ceilings, others are flooded without warning, and there are places where the air becomes thin and hard to breathe. Those who patrol these areas work in pairs, marking their way with chalk or rope so they can find the path back. Yet even with precautions, there are sections no one dares to enter anymore. Too many strange incidents have happened. Equipment failures, sudden collapses, even people who swore they heard footsteps following them in places where no one else could be. The Vatican admits that not every tunnel has been explored in modern times. Some are simply marked as sealed since antiquity in internal records. Others are listed with no details at all, as if the less said, the better. What is certain is that the Labyrinth is more than just a series of corridors. It is a hidden city beneath a city, a place where every turn could lead to another fragment of forgotten history, or to something that was never meant to be found. Hidden deep within the Vatican's stone walls are passageways, built not for ceremony or worship, but for survival. These are the Pope's escape routes, corridors and tunnels designed to move the leader of the Catholic Church out of danger without anyone knowing he has gone. In a city where power has always drawn both loyalty and enemies, these secret paths have been the silent guardians of more than one life. The most famous of these is the Passetto di Borgo, an elevated, fortified corridor that connects the Vatican directly to the towering fortress of Castel Sant'Angelo. From the outside, it looks like part of the city wall, but inside it is a narrow, enclosed walkway stretching nearly 800 meters. Built in the late 15th century by Pope Nicholas V and expanded by Pope Alexander VI, it was a direct escape route that could be used in times of siege or assassination attempts. In the year 1527, during the brutal sack of Rome, Pope Clement VII fled through the Passetto as enemy troops stormed the city, reaching safety inside the castle, while chaos consumed the streets below. But the Passetto is only the part we are allowed to see. Beneath and around the Vatican, there are other routes far less known. Some begin deep inside the Apostolic Palace, winding down into the earth before emerging blocks away from the Vatican walls. Others are said to connect to hidden chambers beneath churches in the city, offering multiple points of escape depending on where danger might come from. These tunnels are deliberately unmarked on most maps, known only to a small circle of trusted guards and papal advisors. Over the centuries, popes have faced all kinds of threats: armed invasions, political uprisings, and plots against their lives. The escape routes were not simply a luxury, they were a necessity. Stories tell of pontiffs slipping away in the middle of the night, disguised as monks or servants, vanishing into the tunnels while their enemies believed them trapped. Even in more recent times, the Vatican has kept these routes maintained, quietly reinforcing walls, adding lighting, and ensuring the doors can still be sealed from within. There are rumours of escape passages that go much deeper, connecting to older Roman tunnels and even sections of the ancient aqueduct system. If true, this would mean a pope could disappear entirely into the underground network of the city and re-emerge miles away without anyone realising how he had escaped. Some believe these deeper routes are no longer in use, while others insist they remain part of a contingency plan known only to the Vatican's highest security officials. Today, most visitors to the Vatican walk past the starting points of these escape routes without the faintest idea they are there. Behind unmarked doors or hidden staircases lies a network built to protect the most powerful religious leader in the world. It is a reminder that beneath the grandeur and ceremony, the Vatican has always had to think like a fortress, ready not just to welcome the faithful, but to shield its leader from those who would see him fall. The escape routes are not just history, they are a quiet insurance policy, still waiting in the shadows for the day they might be needed again. The Passetto di Borgo looks at first glance like nothing more than an ancient wall running along the narrow streets of Rome. Most people pass it without realizing they are walking beside one of the Vatican's most important survival tools. This fortified passageway stretches from the Vatican all the way to Castel Sant'Angelo, almost 800 meters away, and for centuries it was the lifeline that could mean the difference between a pope's capture and his escape. Built in the late 15th century under Pope Nicholas V and later strengthened by Pope Alexander VI, the Passetto is more than just a walkway. It is a fully enclosed defensive corridor, raised above street level, with thick stone walls on either side. From inside, it feels more like a tunnel than a bridge, narrow and dim, the sound of your footsteps echoing off the stone as you move forward. Small openings in the walls once allowed guards to watch the streets below without being seen, making it possible to spot threats long before they reached Vatican territory. The Passetto's most famous moment came during the sack of Rome in the year 1527. Emperor Charles V's troops stormed the city, looting, burning, and killing without mercy. The Vatican was surrounded, and Pope Clement VII's life was in immediate danger. With the enemy closing in, the Pope and his guards fled into the Passetto, moving quickly through the enclosed corridor while chaos raged below. He reached Castel Sant'Angelo and locked himself inside its massive fortress walls, surviving the attack while much of Rome was left in ruins. That single escape cemented the Passetto's reputation as the Pope's ultimate refuge. But the passage was not only used in times of war. Over the centuries, it served as a discreet route for popes to travel between the Vatican and the fortress without attracting public attention. In times of political tension, it allowed them to move unseen, avoiding possible assassination attempts or dangerous crowds. Guards patrolled its length, keeping the route secure day and night, and over time, it became as much a symbol of Vatican power as it was a practical safeguard. Walking through the Passetto today is to walk through a piece of living history. The walls are weathered, the stone darkened by centuries of rain and sun, but its purpose still feels tangible. You can imagine the hurried footsteps of a fleeing pope, the clink of armor from his guards, and the distant roar of an angry city outside. While it is occasionally open to the public for guided tours, much of the time it remains closed, a reminder that it is still part of the Vatican's private network of protection. The Passetto di Borgo is more than just an architectural curiosity. It is a medieval lifeline that once saved the heart of the Catholic Church, a bridge of stone between power and safety. Its presence is a silent reminder that behind the Vatican's grandeur lies a long history of danger, strategy, and survival, hidden in plain sight above the streets of Rome. Deep within the Vatican's underworld, where the light fades and the air grows heavy, there are doors that seem to hum with secrets. They are made of iron, thick and dark, their surfaces scarred by age and rust. Some are secured with massive padlocks, others with intricate locking mechanisms that look centuries old but still gleam as if they are checked often. These are the locked iron doors, barriers that cut off passages and block the way to chambers that no one officially admits to visiting. They stand in places where the tunnels narrow and the walls close in, often at the end of a long stretch of stone corridor. When you see one for the first time, it feels less like a part of the architecture and more like a warning. The hinges are heavy, designed to hold against force. Sometimes there are bolts sunk deep into the surrounding stone, as if the door must resist not just people trying to get in, but perhaps something trying to get out. Few outside the Vatican's inner circles have been allowed to pass through these gates. Those who work in maintenance or security tell guarded stories of being ordered to repair a hinge or replace a lock without ever being told what was on the other side. Some recall the sound of movement beyond the door, though no one was visible when it was briefly opened. Others describe the rush of stale, dry air spilling out, carrying with it a scent, unlike the damp earth of the tunnels, a smell that seemed older, sharper, almost metallic. Speculation about what lies behind the locked iron doors is endless. Some believe they guard access to unstable sections of the labyrinth, places where collapse is a constant risk. Others think they lead to forgotten storerooms filled with treasures from centuries past, relics deemed too controversial or mysterious to display. The most persistent rumours speak of hidden chapels and ritual spaces, preserved exactly as they were left hundreds of years ago, their walls still painted with strange symbols and their altars untouched. In a few rare cases, Visitors on tightly controlled tours have glimpsed these doors from a distance, their guides quickly steering them away. The official explanation is always the same, that they are there for safety, sealing off areas not ready or suitable for the public. But the fact that some of these doors appear on no official map only deepens the mystery. Standing before one, you cannot help but wonder how many times it has been opened in the last 100 years, or if it has been opened at all. The dust that gathers along the floor in front of them suggests long periods of silence, yet the polished shine of certain locks hints at recent use. They are a contradiction in metal form, both ancient and alive. In the dark heart of the Vatican's underground, the locked iron doors are more than just barriers. They are questions without answers, thresholds that mark the line between what the world is allowed to see and what will remain hidden, perhaps forever, behind cold, unyielding steel. Somewhere deep beneath the Vatican, past the known corridors and behind doors that never appear on public maps, there is said to be a single chamber unlike any other. Those who whisper about it call it the Room of Relics. It is not part of the official treasury or the relics displayed in gilded cases for pilgrims to venerate. This room, if it exists, is reserved for sacred and mysterious objects the public has never seen, and perhaps never will. The legends surrounding the Room of Relics are as varied as they are incredible. Some say its shelves are lined with reliquaries containing bones of saints so ancient their names are no longer remembered. Others claim there are pieces of cloth believed to be burial shrouds, still faintly marked by the outlines of human figures. There are whispers of ancient scrolls sealed in glass, their language unreadable to anyone alive today, and chalices that have not been touched since the Middle Ages. Those who claim to have been near the room speak of the way the air changes as you approach it. The temperature drops, and the smell of incense lingers, even though no candles burn. Some report hearing a faint metallic clinking, like the sound of a chain swaying, though no one can say where it comes from. Others mention an almost electric feeling in the air, as though the objects inside are more than just relics. They are charged with the weight of centuries of devotion, or perhaps something older and stranger. Why such a room would remain hidden from the faithful is a question that fuels endless theories. The most charitable explanation is preservation. Many relics are fragile, too easily damaged by light, air, or the touch of human hands. Secrecy could be a way of protecting them for future generations. Yet others suspect that some of these objects might not fit neatly into the Church's accepted narrative of history. Perhaps there are items whose origins cannot be explained, or whose authenticity would be too controversial to confirm or deny. There are stories of a key kept under constant guard, passed only to certain high-ranking officials in the Vatican. Supposedly, even the Pope must request access, though whether this is tradition or pure invention is unclear. No photographs have ever surfaced, no written inventory has been leaked. The silence surrounding the Room of Relics is so complete that it almost feels deliberate, as if the mystery is part of its very purpose. Standing outside such a chamber, one might imagine the walls lined with ancient wood cabinets, their drawers labelled in Latin, or great stone chests bound in iron. In the centre could stand a single altar, holding the most sacred object of all, one that no living soul outside the Church's inner circle has ever laid eyes on. Whether the Room of Relics is fact or carefully crafted legend, it lingers in the imagination as one of the Vatican's most tantalizing secrets. If it exists, it is not simply a storage space. It is a vault of faith, history, and unanswered questions, locked away in the shadows beneath the world's most visited holy site. Deep in the layers beneath the Vatican, beyond the reach of tourists and even most clergy, there are whispers of a vault that holds the most sought-after treasures in all of biblical history. According to legend, among the objects locked away are two of the most powerful relics ever described, the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail. To some, this sounds like the stuff of fantasy, yet the persistence of the stories over centuries has given them a strange weight. The Ark of the Covenant, as described in the Old Testament, was a gold-covered chest built to hold the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. It was carried before the Israelites as they travelled, believed to hold the very presence of God. Its power was said to be so great that touching it without permission meant instant death. The Ark disappeared from recorded history sometime around the 6th century before Christ, leading to endless theories about where it went. Some believe it was destroyed, others that it was hidden by priests, and a few claim it eventually found its way to Rome, where it was kept under the protection of the Church. The Holy Grail, on the other hand, comes from a mix of biblical reference and medieval legend. It is often described as the cup Jesus used at the Last Supper, later said to have caught his blood at the crucifixion. In the centuries that followed, the Grail became a symbol of divine grace and ultimate truth, sparking quests and wars among kings and knights. Though its description changes depending on the story, the Grail is always portrayed as an object of immense spiritual power. The idea that both could be hidden under the Vatican is tied to the belief that the Church, over the course of its long history, acquired countless artifacts from around the world. Some were gifted, others taken during wars, and still others recovered in secret by explorers acting on papal orders. If the Ark and the Grail were ever found, keeping them under Vatican control would serve both as protection and as a way to prevent their powers, real or symbolic, from being used in ways the Church could not control. There are no public records proving their existence in Rome, but certain details keep the legends alive. Writings from the Renaissance hint at a gold chest of ancient lore stored within the papal treasury. Travellers' accounts from the 19th century mention a chalice kept in a guarded chamber, described in ways that match medieval depictions of the Grail. Of course, none of these claims can be verified, and the Vatican offers no comment when asked about them. If such artifacts truly rest beneath St. Peter's, their presence would be more than a matter of faith. It would be a direct link to some of the most pivotal moments in human history. And perhaps that is why the idea fascinates so deeply. Whether the Ark and the chalice lie in the Vatican's shadows, or only in the realm of myth, the possibility alone is enough to keep the world wondering, and to make the locked doors of its underground seem heavier with each passing year. Far beneath the marble and gold of the Vatican are places that bear no resemblance to the grandeur above. They are narrow, airless cells carved into stone, with ceilings so low you cannot stand up straight in some of them. The air is heavy and unmoving, carrying a faint metallic tang that seems to seep from the walls themselves. These are the places where the Church's enemies, real or imagined, were kept, questioned, and sometimes never returned from. The Inquisition is remembered as a time when faith and fear were often tangled together, when being accused of heresy could seal your fate long before you stood trial. Those brought to these underground cells were not just ordinary prisoners. Many were scholars who questioned doctrine, priests accused of corruption, or individuals suspected of witchcraft or forbidden practices. Others were political opponents, swept away in the name of protecting the Church. The walls tell their own silent story. In some of these rooms, dark stains still mark the stone floor. Generations of workers and guards have called them bloodstains, left behind from interrogations that went too far or executions carried out in secrecy. The marks resist scrubbing, as if the stone has absorbed the memory of what happened there. The light in these cells is scarce, sometimes nothing more than a small slit in the wall, allowing a narrow blade of sunlight to cut across the gloom for a few minutes each day. The sound in these places plays tricks on you. A drop of water falling somewhere in the distance echoes like a whisper. Footsteps fade and return as if the corridors shift when you are not looking. In the days when they were in use, the cries of prisoners would have carried through the stone, though muffled enough that the world above could pretend not to hear them. Guards often kept their voices low, speaking in quick bursts before falling into silence again. Not all who entered these cells were condemned to die, but those who left did so changed. Some emerged broken in spirit, forced to confess to crimes they had never committed just to see the light again. Others left only in death, their bodies carried away to unmarked graves or hidden burial chambers. The Vatican has never released a complete record of how many people passed through these rooms, leaving the truth buried in both stone and secrecy. Today, most of these cells are sealed off. A few are preserved as historical spaces, shown only to a handful of researchers or visiting clergy. Even in these rare cases, the tours are brief, the explanations vague, as if too much detail would stir something better left undisturbed. The stains remain, silent and immovable, a reminder of a side of history the Vatican does not display in its museums. Standing in one of these cold chambers, you cannot help but feel the weight of what happened here. The walls seem to breathe with old secrets, the floor heavy with stories it cannot tell. Above, the bells of St. Peter's may still ring for the faithful, but down here, the echoes belong to another kind of history, one written in shadows and in blood that will never wash away. Beneath the Vatican's polished marble halls and sunlit courtyards lies a place few have ever seen, a place where the air smells of dust and ancient paper. It is the Subterranean Library, a rumoured expanse of shelves that stretch far into the darkness, holding books and manuscripts that have been hidden from the public for centuries. While the Vatican Library above is celebrated for its beauty and scholarly treasures, this underground counterpart is said to be its shadow, housing the works deemed too dangerous, too controversial, or too mysterious for ordinary eyes. The shelves are said to be packed so tightly with volumes that the aisles feel like narrow corridors between walls of leather-bound secrets. Some of these books are rumoured to be older than the church itself, scrolls from Babylon, Egypt, and Greece, chronicling beliefs and histories that challenge the biblical narrative. Others may be coded texts, their meanings locked away in forgotten languages, waiting for someone to understand their warnings or prophecies. There are whispered tales of maps that show lands long thought lost, and diagrams of machines centuries ahead of their time. The Vatican has always insisted that all knowledge in its care is preserved responsibly, but there are many who believe that this library is where inconvenient truths are quietly stored. Certain banned theological works, heretical writings from medieval thinkers, and records from councils where the direction of the church was secretly decided could all be waiting on these shelves. Even stranger are the rumours that some books are bound not in animal hide, but in the skin of those who authored them, a grim testament to the danger of crossing the powers of their time. Access to this hidden library, if it truly exists, would be more restricted than any other place in the Vatican. It would take more than a letter of introduction from a scholar or a request from a priest. The key, if there is one, would likely be held by only a handful of the highest-ranking members of the church, passed quietly from one generation to the next. Those who are allowed in might be sworn to secrecy, forbidden to copy or even describe what they have seen. Imagining this place brings a chill, not just because of the stone walls and the damp air, but because of the weight of what it might contain. Every book is a voice from the past, and here, those voices are silenced not because they are lost, but because they are hidden. The flicker of a candle could reveal a title in faded gold lettering, a name forgotten by history, or a date that would rewrite everything we think we know about the world. Some say the Subterranean Library is just a myth, a story for conspiracy theorists and lovers of hidden history. But even if it is only a story, it has a strange power. It makes you wonder what truths could be buried so deep that only stone walls and centuries of secrecy can keep them safe. And if such a place does exist under the Vatican, the greatest question is not what is down there. It is why they never want you to see it. In the deepest and most silent corners beneath the Vatican, there are said to be scrolls so old that even the most skilled linguists cannot fully read them. They are fragile things, rolled tight and stored in protective cases. Their surfaces covered in characters and symbols from languages that no living person can completely understand. Some are written in scripts so strange they do not match any known civilization, as if they were carried to Earth from another world of thought and meaning. These scrolls, are not the kind of documents you find in history museums. They are older than the Roman Empire, older than the rise of Christianity, and perhaps even older than recorded history itself. The ink has faded in places, but in others it remains dark and sharp, as though it were laid down only yesterday. The materials used to create them are equally puzzling. Animal skins cured in ways no modern tanning process can replicate, papyrus tougher than stone, and even thin sheets of metal etched with precise markings. Scholars who have been allowed even a brief glance at these writings often describe them with awe and frustration. Some symbols resemble early Sumerian or Egyptian scripts, but twist into shapes that break all known grammatical rules. Others look like elaborate constellations, possibly maps of the stars as they appeared tens of thousands of years ago. In rare cases, a handful of words can be linked to known languages, offering tantalizing clues about their meaning before the trail goes cold. Theories about their origins are as varied as the scrolls themselves. Some believe they are the work of civilizations that existed long before the rise of Mesopotamia, cultures erased from history by natural disaster or deliberate suppression. Others think they might be coded records, designed so only those with specific knowledge could read them. A few more daring voices suggest they are messages from beings not of this world, left for humanity to find when the time was right. Attempts to translate them have been slow and incomplete. Every time progress is made, a new symbol or structure appears that defies explanation, forcing scholars to start over. Even the Vatican, which is rumoured to keep these scrolls in climate-controlled vaults, has never claimed to fully understand them. Publicly, their existence is rarely acknowledged, and no images or reproductions have ever been released. There is something haunting about the idea of knowledge locked away in a language no one can speak. Each scroll could hold the history of an ancient empire, the record of a lost invention, or a prophecy meant to guide future generations. But without the key to their meaning, they remain silent. Some say the Vatican keeps them hidden because translating them could change everything we know about our past. Others argue they are protected to keep their wisdom safe until humanity is ready to hear it. Whatever the truth, the scrolls in forgotten tongues remain an enigma, a voice from deep time, calling out in a language the world has not yet learned to answer. Deep within the restricted archives beneath the Vatican, there are said to be maps unlike any you have ever seen. They are not the colourful charts of kingdoms and borders from medieval Europe, nor the neatly drawn grids of modern surveyors. These are maps that claim to show the world as it was thousands of years ago, long before recorded history, and long before the rise of the civilizations we know. What makes them truly astonishing is that they depict coastlines, rivers, and mountain ranges, as they would have appeared before a cataclysmic event that ancient stories call the Great Flood. The maps are said to be drawn with remarkable precision, showing land where there is now ocean, and water where there is now land. Some show Antarctica without ice, its rocky terrain and river valleys exposed, as if the cartographer had surveyed it in a time when the continent was green. Others depict the Mediterranean before it fully filled with water, or the Persian Gulf as a fertile valley rather than a shallow sea. These details match what modern scientists have only recently suggested through geological research. Yet these maps, if real, would be thousands of years older than the science that confirms them. Legends claim these maps were copied from even older sources, perhaps by civilizations that existed before the flood myths found in cultures all over the world. The Sumerians wrote of a great deluge, the Bible tells the story of Noah, and the Greeks spoke of floods sent by the gods to cleanse the earth. If the Vatican truly possesses these maps, it could mean that these tales were not just symbolic, but based on real events witnessed by humans who lived through them. The materials of the maps are as strange as their content. Some are on parchment so ancient it crumbles at a touch, while others are etched into thin sheets of copper or gold leaf. The artistry suggests advanced knowledge of mathematics, navigation, and astronomy. Compass lines cross the seas with perfect accuracy, and latitude markings suggest an understanding of the Earth's curvature long before such ideas were thought possible. Why such maps would be hidden away is a question that sparks endless debate. Perhaps revealing them would force historians to admit that our timeline of human civilization is wrong. Maybe they point to the existence of a lost global culture, one that vanished without leaving anything behind except these mysterious charts. Or perhaps they are kept secret because they hint at a past humanity is not ready to accept. Imagining one of these maps spread out on a wooden table in the dim light of a subterranean vault is enough to make your heart race. You would trace your fingers over a coastline that no longer exists, trying to imagine the people who once lived there, the cities now buried beneath the waves. These maps, if they truly lie hidden in the Vatican, are more than historical documents. They are windows into a forgotten earth, a world that drowned but still whispers through lines of ink drawn by hands that lived before history began. Beneath the Vatican's sprawling network of passageways, there are tunnels that seem to lead somewhere important, until suddenly they don't. You follow their narrow stone corridors, feeling the cool dampness on your skin, only to be stopped by a wall of bricks sealing the way forward. These are the tunnels to nowhere, but anyone who has spent time in the underground will tell you they were never meant to be dead ends. Somewhere beyond those walls lies something the Church does not want the world to see. The bricks are not random, they are laid with care, often in patterns that match the surrounding architecture so well you might think the wall was always there. In some cases, the mortar is centuries old, hardened like rock. In others, the work is surprisingly fresh, as if the barrier was built only a few decades ago. This has led many to believe that sealing tunnels is an ongoing practice, not a relic of the distant past. Whispers about what lies beyond the bricked walls vary wildly. Some say the tunnels once connected to hidden burial chambers, long since closed to prevent looting or unwanted discovery. Others claim they lead to private chapels where rituals took place that would scandalize the faithful if revealed. A few more daring voices suggest that some passages connect to locations outside the Vatican entirely, ancient escape routes or secret paths to other parts of Rome, cut off to prevent infiltration. There are stories of workers sent to reinforce the underground who stumbled across these sealed passages. One described seeing a faint light seeping through a crack between the bricks, as if there was still a space in use on the other side. Another spoke of hearing the faint echo of movement beyond the wall, though no one else was supposed to be down there. In both cases, the workers were told to stop asking questions and finish their jobs quickly. Some of the oldest bricked-off sections date back to the Renaissance, when Rome was a dangerous place, and popes had to protect themselves from political enemies. Other walls are believed to have been added during times of upheaval, like the Napoleonic invasions or the Second World War. It is possible that some tunnels were closed simply for safety, their structures weakened by time. But the deliberate precision of many of these closures suggests that safety was only part of the reason. Walking through the underground and finding one of these ends is unsettling. You stand there, staring at the wall, knowing that on the other side could be a forgotten hall filled with priceless relics, a relic of a vanished faith, or even just another empty corridor lost to time. The truth is hidden behind layers of brick and silence, and the Vatican is in no hurry to tear them down. The tunnels to nowhere are more than architectural oddities. They are reminders that, in the Vatican's depths, endings are not always endings. Sometimes they are carefully constructed lies in stone, hiding paths that might lead to truths too heavy for the world above. Far below the Vatican's echoing basilicas and bustling courtyards, there are rooms where sound itself seems to vanish. These are the chambers of silence, spaces engineered not for beauty or worship, but for secrecy. Step inside, and the air feels heavier, as if it is pressing in around you. Your footsteps make no sound. Even your own breathing seems distant, muted by walls designed to swallow every noise. It is an unsettling sensation, like being cut off from the rest of the world. The construction of these chambers is unlike anything else in the underground. The walls are thick, lined with layers of stone, and an inner structure meant to absorb vibration. In some, a second wall is built just inside the first, creating a hollow space between them that traps and deadens sound. The floors are often covered in heavy wooden planks or padded with ancient materials that look like they belong in a royal palace rather than a hidden vault. The ceilings are low, sometimes arched, their surfaces carved with patterns that scatter even the faintest echo. No one knows exactly when these rooms were built. Some theories trace them back to the Middle Ages, when political and religious tensions made secrecy a matter of survival. Others believe they are far older, perhaps dating to the time when the Vatican was still built over the remnants of Roman structures. The fact that they still function perfectly after so many centuries speaks to the skill of their builders. The purpose of the Chambers of Silence is a matter of speculation. Some suggest they were used for sensitive meetings between church leaders, where nothing spoken could be overheard or recorded. Others believe they were interrogation rooms, where those brought before inquisitors could speak their confessions without fear that their words would carry beyond the walls. A few even claim that rituals of an esoteric nature took place here, protected by the absolute stillness from prying ears. Those who have been inside one of these rooms describe a strange disorientation. Without sound to anchor you, time seems to slow, and your own heartbeat becomes the loudest thing in your awareness. Some people feel a kind of panic after only a few minutes, desperate to hear a familiar noise again. Others find the silence almost intoxicating, a complete separation from the chaos above. The Vatican rarely acknowledges the existence of such rooms, though architects who have studied parts of the underground say the design is entirely intentional. A single door, often heavy and reinforced, is the only way in or out. Once it closes, the outside world disappears. In these spaces, a whispered word or a guarded confession could remain hidden forever. In the labyrinth below, where every corridor seems to hold a mystery, the Chambers of Silence stand out as places where the very air is trained to keep secrets. Whatever was planned, decided, or confessed within their walls is locked away not just by human will, but by the deep and deliberate absence of sound itself. Beneath the ornate halls and grand chambers of the Apostolic Palace, where popes have ruled for centuries, lies a part of the Vatican that is never shown on guided tours. It is said to be a hidden prison, a place where walls of cold stone have held those who were never supposed to be seen again. Officially, it does not exist. There are no public records, no entries in the archives that mention its construction or use. Yet stories persist, passed quietly between historians, archivists, and the rare workers who claim to have seen it. The cells here are nothing like the ornate architecture above. They are narrow and bare, their only light coming from small barred openings cut high into the wall. Heavy wooden doors, reinforced with iron bolts, seal each one, and behind them is a space just large enough for a thin bed or a pile of straw. The air smells faintly of damp stone, and the silence is broken only by the sound of dripping water somewhere deep in the tunnels. Those said to have been kept here were not ordinary criminals. Many were political prisoners, men and women who had fallen out of favour with the church or with powerful allies in European courts. Some were clergymen accused of betrayal or heresy, locked away to prevent their words from spreading. Others were diplomats, envoys, or even members of royal families whose disappearance could be quietly arranged without public trials or questions. Unlike other prisons of the time, this one was not about punishment in the open. It was about making people vanish. A prisoner might be brought in under the cover of night, moved through side passages so that no one outside the inner circle would know they had ever arrived. There are accounts of people who entered the Vatican on official business and were never seen again, their names eventually fading from public memory. The most haunting stories come from workers who claim to have repaired or reinforced parts of the underground. One described finding a row of cells with rusted shackles still attached to the walls as if the prisoners had been chained in place. Another claimed to see faint scratches carved into the stone, marks that might have been desperate attempts to record the passage of time. During periods of political instability, the prison would have been a powerful tool. It allowed the Vatican to neutralize threats quietly, without the spectacle of a public trial or execution. Once someone was inside, their fate was entirely at the mercy of those who controlled the keys. Today, if the prison still exists, it is sealed behind locked doors and false walls, its corridors dark and unused. The Vatican will neither confirm nor deny its existence, and perhaps that is the point. The lack of proof only deepens the mystery, allowing it to live on in whispers. Whether it is an abandoned relic or a still functioning secret, the prison below the palace remains a chilling reminder that not all of the Vatican's power has been exercised in the light. Beneath the Vatican, every turn of the soil carries the possibility of revealing something extraordinary. Over the years, excavations have taken place for repairs, renovations, or archaeological study, but some of these digs have ended far sooner than anyone expected. Workers have been ordered to stop, equipment has been removed overnight, and the areas have been sealed without explanation. These are the discoveries in the dirt, moments when something was found that the world above was never meant to see. Most of the Vatican sits on ground layered with history. Roman roads, pagan temples, Christian burial sites, and medieval fortifications all lie stacked one on top of another. This means that even the smallest excavation can turn into a journey through time. Often, the discoveries are catalogued and stored, eventually making their way into museums or archives. But sometimes, according to whispered accounts, something is uncovered that changes the tone entirely. One such story comes from the mid-20th century, when workers digging near the foundations of St. Peter's supposedly broke into a chamber that did not match any of the known maps. Inside, they found strange inscriptions carved into the walls, written in a language no one could identify. The site was immediately closed, and the workers reassigned. No official statement was made, and the chamber has never appeared in any public records since. In another account, a construction crew tasked with upgrading utility lines reportedly unearthed human remains unlike any seen before. The bones were massive, far larger than those of any normal person, and the skulls had unusual shapes. Within hours, Vatican officials were on site, and the area was fenced off. Whatever was found was removed in sealed crates, and the work was completed without further comment. Some believe these sudden shutdowns happen when artifacts are discovered that could challenge accepted history or theology. Ancient maps that predate known civilizations, religious symbols from cultures the Church has never acknowledged, or evidence of rituals far older than Christianity are all rumoured to have been pulled from the dirt only to vanish into private storage. The secrecy is not without purpose. Revealing such finds could spark debates that the Vatican would rather avoid, forcing them to address questions about the origins of faith, the accuracy of historical timelines, or the influence of forgotten cultures. By closing the excavations quickly, the Church can control the narrative, ensuring that whatever was found does not become public knowledge. For the few workers who have glimpsed these hidden discoveries, the memory is hard to shake. They describe feeling as though they had stumbled into a forbidden part of history, one that was immediately taken away from them. Even decades later, they speak of it in cautious tones, wary of attracting attention. Somewhere under the Vatican, the dirt still holds its secrets. Each layer of earth is like a locked drawer, and every now and then, one is opened by accident. But when what lies inside threatens to change the story we have been told, the drawer is slammed shut, the key is turned, and the earth is left to guard its mysteries in silence once again. In the long history of the Vatican, thousands of artifacts have passed through its hands. Ancient relics, priceless works of art, rare manuscripts, and sacred objects from around the world. Most are carefully preserved, documented, and stored in the archives or displayed in museums. But there are some that appear briefly in official records, only to vanish soon after, erased as if they never existed. These are the artifacts that disappeared, leaving behind nothing but questions and the faintest traces in old inventories or private notes. Sometimes these disappearances are discovered by accident. A scholar researching in the archives might find a catalogue from centuries past describing an object in detail, a relic from the Holy Land, a golden idol from South America, a sealed scroll from ancient Mesopotamia, only to find no current listing for it anywhere. When they ask about it, the answers are vague. Perhaps it was lost, damaged, or transferred to another collection, but no proof is ever provided. In other cases, a photograph or drawing might surface, showing an object in the Vatican's possession at some point in time. Yet no official history acknowledges that it was ever there. One story tells of a small, intricately carved stone tablet found during an excavation in the early 1900s. The carvings depicted a scene that seemed to merge biblical imagery with symbols from a much older culture. For a short time, it was studied by a handful of experts, then suddenly removed from all research. Its last mention in the archives is dated just weeks after its discovery, after which it vanishes entirely. Another case involves a medieval manuscript describing astronomical knowledge far ahead of its era. The text included star charts that modern scientists confirm would have been accurate thousands of years ago, suggesting the manuscript was a copy of something much older. It was photographed and catalogued in the 1970s, but when later researchers requested access, they were told it could not be located. Some believe it now rests in a locked vault, hidden from public view for reasons the Vatican has never explained. Why would such artifacts be hidden or erased? Some suggest it is a matter of protecting faith from evidence that might contradict official doctrine. Others believe the motivation is political, with certain discoveries offering proof of events or ideas the Church would prefer to keep in the shadows. There is also the possibility that some items are so valuable, historically or spiritually, that their exposure could lead to theft or conflict. Whatever the reason, the effect is the same. Each vanished artifact becomes a ghost in history, its existence known only through whispers and scraps of evidence. The loss is not just to the Church's collection, but to humanity's understanding of its own past. Somewhere beneath the Vatican, in rooms with no public doors, the artifacts that disappeared may still be sitting in silence, waiting for the day when the walls around them crack open. Until then, they remain invisible chapters in the story of the world, locked away where only a select few will ever see them again. In the shadowed corners of the Vatican's archives, there are said to be entire shelves filled with reports the public has never seen. These are not works of theology or routine administrative records, but detailed accounts of archaeological digs, excavations that began as ordinary research and ended with results so unexpected that the findings were immediately locked away. To most of the world, these digs might as well have never happened. Archaeological work under and around the Vatican is nothing new. The ground beneath it is layered with the remnants of Rome, stretching back long before the Christian era. Excavations are often carried out for preservation, restoration, or historical study, and the results are typically celebrated and published. But every now and then, the narrative changes. Workers uncover something that does not fit the accepted history, and that is when the reports vanish into the restricted archives. One story from the late 1940s describes a dig beneath the foundations of a lesser-known Vatican chapel. The team expected to find little more than Roman masonry. Instead, they uncovered a section of floor made from massive stone blocks unlike anything else in the area. The stones were cut with impossible precision, the gaps between them so tight that even a blade could not slip through. The style did not match Roman construction, and some geologists claimed the rock had been quarried from hundreds of miles away. Within days, the excavation was halted, and the reports, complete with photographs, were filed away and never seen again. Another account involves a more recent dig in the early 2000s. This time, archaeologists were documenting an old burial chamber when they found an object embedded in the wall, a small metallic disc covered in etched markings that no one recognized. The team began photographing and scanning the find, but the next day, the chamber was sealed, the disc removed, and the official paperwork described the discovery as non-significant debris. Those who had seen it disagreed, calling it the most unusual artifact they had ever encountered. Why would such reports be suppressed? The most common theory is that these discoveries hint at a history far older and more complex than the one told in textbooks. If evidence surfaced showing that advanced engineering or unknown cultures existed long before Rome, it could challenge both academic timelines and certain religious interpretations. By keeping the reports locked away, the Vatican can control the narrative and avoid public scrutiny. For those who have worked on these digs, the secrecy is often frustrating. They speak of long nights spent documenting incredible finds, only to be told they could never publish or even discuss them. Some remain silent out of loyalty or fear, while others quietly share fragments of what they saw, enough to keep the rumors alive. Somewhere behind the locked doors of the Vatican's deepest archives, the suppressed dig reports are gathering dust. Inside them may be the blueprints of civilizations we have forgotten, artifacts from worlds we never knew existed, and truths that could rewrite our understanding of the past. But as long as they remain sealed, the Earth will keep her secrets, and history will continue to be told as those in power wish it to be. Beneath the bustling streets of Rome lies a passage that has been both a lifeline and a legend for centuries. It is the fortified tunnel that links the Vatican directly to Castel Sant'Angelo, the ancient fortress that has stood watch over the Tiber River since the days of the Roman Empire. Known as the Passetto di Borgo, this hidden walkway stretches for nearly half a mile, its stone walls shielding those inside from the dangers above. The tunnel's origins date back to the late 15th century, when Pope Nicholas V began fortifying the Vatican against threats. His work was expanded by Pope Alexander VI, who saw the value of having a secure escape route in times of siege or political unrest. The path runs high above street level but is enclosed, making it invisible to most who pass by. Inside, it is narrow and dimly lit, the kind of place where every footstep echoes just enough to remind you of the emptiness around you. Castel Sant'Angelo itself was originally built as a mausoleum for the Roman Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century. Over the centuries, it was transformed into a fortress, a papal residence, and even a prison. In times of crisis, it became the safest place in the city, and the tunnel ensured that the Pope and his closest advisors could reach it without ever setting foot on open ground. History records several dramatic moments when the tunnel was used. In 1527, during the brutal sack of Rome by the troops of Emperor Charles V, Pope Clement VII fled through the Passetto as enemy forces stormed the city. The walls of the Vatican were breached, churches burned, and thousands were killed. But the Pope reached the fortress safely and held out there for months. Without the tunnel, he might not have survived at all. Over the years, the Passetto became a symbol of the Vatican's resilience and its ability to endure even in the face of chaos. But it was never just an escape route. It also allowed the discreet movement of messengers, supplies, and even prisoners between the fortress and the Vatican without drawing public attention. Its strategic value was so great that for centuries it was kept locked and heavily guarded. Today, parts of the tunnel are occasionally open to the public, though much of it remains off-limits. Walking through it, you can feel the weight of history pressing in from both sides. The rough stone walls seem to hold the memory of the desperate footsteps that once echoed there, the whispered orders, the hurried prayers. It is a place where you can almost see the flicker of torchlight against the stone and hear the distant roar of battle from above. The tunnel to Castel Sant'Angelo is more than a passage of stone. It is a reminder that even the most sacred places have had to fight for survival. In its shadows lies a story of fear, escape, and the determination of those who ruled the Vatican to protect not only their power, but their lives, no matter the danger closing in outside. Beneath the city of Rome lies a second city, one made not of marble palaces and open plazas, but of dark tunnels and hidden passageways. It is a sprawling network that, according to some accounts, connects the Vatican to catacombs and underground sites miles away. While tourists can visit certain well-lit sections of Rome's catacombs, the deeper, uncharted routes are far more mysterious, and some say far more dangerous. The origins of these underground pathways stretch back long before Christianity. The earliest Roman catacombs were pagan burial grounds, carved into the soft volcanic stone outside the city walls. Over centuries, new tunnels were added, branching out like veins beneath the earth. When Christianity emerged and began to spread, these same spaces were used to bury the faithful, hold secret gatherings, and hide from persecution. According to old maps and whispered rumours, some of these catacombs extend toward Vatican territory, with hidden entrances sealed behind church walls or beneath old chapels. The suggestion is that, at some point in history, deliberate connections were made between the papal stronghold and these ancient burial sites. Such routes would have allowed for discreet travel far beyond the Vatican's borders, bypassing the crowded and often dangerous streets above. One of the most persistent legends involves a route that supposedly links the Vatican to the Catacombs of Priscilla, more than 2 miles away. The Priscilla catacombs are among the oldest in Rome, home to frescoes that some scholars believe depict some of the earliest known images of the Virgin Mary. If the stories are true, this connection would have given the Vatican direct access to one of Christianity's most sacred early burial grounds, without needing to pass through public areas. There are also claims of links to pagan catacombs, where the dead were laid to rest long before the arrival of Christianity. These tunnels are said to contain altars, carvings of forgotten gods, and burial chambers untouched for thousands of years. The idea that the Vatican might still have access to such places raises questions about why these connections were maintained, or perhaps why they were never fully sealed. Modern archaeologists and explorers have tried to trace these routes, but many attempts end at bricked-over walls, collapsed ceilings, or locked gates guarded by Vatican security. In some cases, the official explanation is safety. Sections of the tunnels are unstable and dangerous to enter. In others, the answer is silence, leaving room for speculation about what lies beyond the barriers. If the network truly links the Vatican to distant catacombs, it would be a remarkable blend of history and strategy. In times of crisis, such hidden paths could have been used for escape, for moving treasures out of danger, or even for discreet meetings beyond the reach of watchful eyes. Today, the idea of a city beneath a city still sparks the imagination, a reminder that Rome's history is not just written in stone above ground, but carved deep into the rock below. Somewhere in those dark, twisting passages, the past still lingers, waiting for the brave or the authorized to find it. Beneath the Vatican, beyond the stone corridors and ancient crypts, there are whispers of another kind of passage, one not carved for footsteps, but for water. These are the forgotten river tunnels, channels that once flowed directly from the heart of Vatican territory to the wide, slow-moving waters of the Tiber River. Unlike the grand bridges and visible embankments that line modern Rome, these passages are almost entirely hidden from sight, sealed behind locked grates or buried under centuries of construction. The idea of connecting the Vatican to the Tiber by water is not as strange as it sounds. In ancient times, Rome's waterways were lifelines, carrying goods, messages, and even people in and out of the city with a speed that land routes could not match. The Tiber was the city's main artery, and it would have been practical, even essential for those in power, to have direct access to it, without relying on crowded docks or public landings. A concealed tunnel leading to the river would have allowed for discreet transport of treasures, supplies, or individuals who needed to arrive or depart unseen. Some historians believe the origins of these tunnels predate the Vatican itself, possibly built when the area was still a Roman necropolis. As Christianity rose to dominance and St. Peter's Basilica was constructed, these waterways may have been expanded or adapted for new purposes. Over time, they became part of a network of escape routes, joining the better-known Passetto di Borgo and other hidden corridors. In moments of crisis, slipping into the darkness of a water tunnel could mean the difference between capture and freedom. The most persistent legends describe narrow stone channels, just wide enough for a small boat to pass through, with ceilings low enough that a traveller would have to crouch. The walls are said to be slick with centuries of moisture, the air heavy with the smell of the river. Some even speak of carved markings along the way, symbols or initials left by those who navigated the tunnels long ago. At night, the exit to the Tiber would have been easy to conceal, hidden among the reeds or under the shadow of an arch. Explorers in the 19th century claim to have stumbled upon bricked-off waterways under buildings near the Vatican, their paths leading toward the river before vanishing into sealed walls. Whether these were part of the legendary tunnels or simply old drainage systems is impossible to prove, as the Vatican offers no confirmation and the sites are heavily restricted. If they still exist today, the river tunnels are more than just relics of ancient engineering. They represent the Vatican's constant need for secrecy and control, even in matters as practical as transportation. In a city where every stone has a story, these submerged passages tell one of movement and escape, of goods and people slipping in and out without a trace. And somewhere beneath the weight of centuries, the water may still flow, carrying with it the echoes of journeys no one was meant to witness. Deep within the layers of the Vatican, far from the echoing halls of St. Peter's and the public chapels, where pilgrims kneel in prayer, there are whispers of a place known only to a select few. It is said to be a hidden chapel, a space so secret that its very existence is denied by official guides and absent from any map. Unlike the grand basilicas covered in gold and frescoes, this chapel is not meant to inspire crowds. It is a place for the highest clergy, where prayers are spoken in voices barely above a whisper, and rituals unfold beyond the eyes of the world. Stories about the hidden chapel vary, but they often begin with the same detail. It lies behind a door that does not appear to lead anywhere important. Some say it is reached through a narrow stairwell disguised as a maintenance access point. Others speak of a locked archway at the end of an unused corridor, guarded not by visible sentries, but by the constant watch of those who know its significance. Once inside, the chapel is described as small but impossibly ornate, every inch covered in sacred symbols and gold leaf patterns that shimmer in the candlelight. Its purpose is a matter of speculation. Some believe it is reserved for the most private acts of worship, a place where popes and cardinals seek guidance before making decisions that could alter the course of history. Others suggest it is used for ceremonies too ancient or mysterious to be part of the regular liturgy, rituals passed down through generations of clergy who guard their secrets as fiercely as their faith. There are even claims that relics never shown to the public are kept here, displayed only during certain rites known to a handful of participants. One legend tells of a pope in the 17th century who retreated to the hidden chapel every night for a month before issuing a decree that would change the political landscape of Europe. Another story speaks of a group of cardinals meeting there in the dead of night during the Second World War, plotting ways to protect sacred treasures from the advancing armies. Whether these tales are true or the inventions of creative minds, they have only added to the sense of mystery surrounding the place. Over the years, a few researchers and maintenance workers have claimed to catch glimpses of its entrance or hear faint chanting from behind locked doors. None have been able to produce photographs or detailed proof, but the consistency of their accounts keeps the possibility alive. The Vatican, as expected, offers no comment on such matters. leaving the public to wonder. If the hidden chapel truly exists, it is more than just a secret room. It is a reminder that even in the most open displays of faith, there are layers of devotion that remain unseen. Behind the stone walls and closed doors of the Vatican, there may still be a sanctuary where only the most trusted are welcome, a place where centuries of power and prayer meet in perfect, silent unity. Beneath the Vatican's foundations, there are stories of a place unlike any other in the Holy City, a room where light bends in impossible ways, where reflections multiply until the walls seem to vanish. This is the Chamber of Mirrors, a legendary underground hall said to be tied to rituals that few outside the highest ranks of the Church have ever witnessed. No official records mention it, yet its name appears in scattered whispers from travellers' journals, half-forgotten letters, and the confessions of those who once served deep within the Vatican's hidden corridors. The chamber is described as perfectly circular, its walls lined with panels of polished metal or glass that reflect not only the person standing within, but the very flicker of candle flames, creating an endless field of shimmering light. The floor is said to be inlaid with intricate geometric patterns, designs that seem to shift when viewed in the mirrors, as if the room itself is alive and breathing. The ceiling, according to legend, is domed and covered in gold leaf, with a single lantern at the centre casting light that scatters and multiplies into 1,000 glints. No one agrees on when or why it was built. Some believe it dates back to the Renaissance, created by a pope fascinated with both art and the mystical sciences. At that time, mirrors were rare and costly, and to create an entire room lined with them would have been an extravagant act meant to impress and perhaps intimidate those who entered. Others think its origins are older still, tied to ancient rites adopted and adapted by the Church, where mirrors symbolize the soul and the eternal. The rituals said to take place there are as mysterious as the chamber itself. Certain accounts speak of gatherings held in complete silence, where the mirrors reflected the participants endlessly, forcing them to confront themselves from every angle. Others tell of ceremonies involving relics placed at the center of the room, their image multiplied in every direction as prayers were chanted in Latin. Some even claim the mirrors were used for scrying, an ancient practice of gazing into reflective surfaces to see visions of the past, the future, or the divine. One of the most enduring tales comes from a 19th century traveller who claimed to have been led blindfolded into the chamber as part of a secret initiation. When the blindfold was removed, he found himself surrounded by what seemed like an infinite number of figures, all dressed in ceremonial robes. He swore that as the candles burned lower, the reflections began to move out of sync, as if the mirrored figures had wills of their own. Whether these stories are exaggerated or completely fabricated, the Chamber of Mirrors continues to live in the imagination as one of the Vatican's most unsettling legends. If it does exist, it is more than just a work of craftsmanship. It is a place where perception and reality blur, where those who enter might find themselves questioning what is real and what is merely a reflection in the endless, watching glass. Far beneath the Vatican's sunlit courtyards and marble halls, there is a darkness that not even the most faithful pilgrims will ever see. In that darkness, there are tunnels that twist and branch for miles, some mapped, others long forgotten. And somewhere in those depths, according to persistent whispers, walk the men tasked with guarding them, the Vatican's underworld guards. This is not the Swiss Guard, with their colourful uniforms and ceremonial pikes. This is something far more secretive. The underworld guards are said to be a small, highly trained unit, assigned specifically to patrol the deepest layers of the Vatican's subterranean world. They work in places where the air is damp, the light is dim, and the silence is broken only by the sound of their own footsteps. Unlike the security seen by visitors, these men are rarely, if ever, visible to the public. Their duties take them into areas sealed to all but a handful of authorized personnel, where ancient walls press in close and history itself seems to breathe. No one knows exactly when this unit was formed. Some believe it began centuries ago, when the popes realized that the Vatican's vast network of tunnels, chambers, and catacombs could be both a treasure and a threat. Without constant watch, intruders could slip in from the outside, smugglers could use the darkness to move forbidden goods, and dangerous secrets could be uncovered by accident. The solution was to station guards where no one expected them, underground, always present, always unseen. Accounts from those who claim to have encountered them describe men dressed not in bright colours, but in dark, practical clothing, suited for the narrow, uneven passages below. They carry powerful flashlights and sometimes weapons, and they move with the quiet precision of people trained to navigate spaces most would find suffocating. Their job is not only to watch for intruders, but also to check for signs of damage, flooding, or tampering with locked gates and sealed doors. Some believe the underworld guards also have another task, protecting whatever secrets lie in the Vatican's deepest rooms. This could mean ancient relics, sensitive documents, or even archaeological sites that the Church does not want exposed. If the legends are true, these men know the locations of chambers that do not appear on any official map. They may be the only ones alive who have seen certain corridors still untouched since the days of the Roman Empire. From time to time, stories surface of explorers who ventured too far into restricted areas near the Vatican and were met not with polite warnings, but with a sudden, firm escort back to the surface by men who refused to answer any questions. These encounters add to the mystery, painting the underworld guards as shadows within shadows, protectors of a realm most people will never glimpse. If they exist, their work will never make headlines or appear in history books. They will remain in the background, walking their endless patrol through cold stone corridors, ensuring that whatever lies beneath the Vatican stays there, hidden from the eyes of the world. In a city built on faith and secrecy, they are the silent sentinels of the underground. When asked about what lies beneath the Vatican, officials will point to a carefully chosen list of sites, places that are clean, well lit, and safe for visitors. This is the small fraction of the underground they admit exists, and it is presented as though it represents the entirety of what's down there. To the average tourist, it is an impressive collection of history and faith, but to those who have heard the stories, it is only the tip of an enormous iceberg hidden in the dark. One of the most famous publicly acknowledged areas is the Vatican necropolis, or scavi, lying directly beneath St. Peter's Basilica. Here, visitors can walk among ancient tombs dating back to the time of the Roman Empire, including the site believed to hold the remains of St. Peter himself. The tour is tightly controlled, and only a limited number of people are allowed in each day. The lighting is soft, the floors are secure, and every step is guided by an official escort. It feels open and transparent, but every doorway not on the tour is locked tight. There are also certain sections of catacombs that have been restored and made accessible, lined with Christian symbols and frescoes that have survived for centuries. These areas serve as powerful reminders of the early church, when followers met in secret and buried their dead far from the reach of Roman authorities. Yet even here, the routes are selective. Visitors walk past heavy gates that lead into darkness, with no explanation of what lies beyond. The Vatican museums themselves have basements and storage areas that can be visited by special request. These spaces hold artifacts from around the world, ancient statues, fragments of temples, and relics brought back from archaeological digs. The official narrative focuses on preservation and scholarship, but it also carefully avoids discussing anything that has not been formally catalogued or put on display. By showing these approved areas, the Vatican creates a sense of openness while maintaining strict control over what the world gets to see. The message is clear. This is what exists, and beyond it, there is nothing of interest. For many visitors, that is enough. The officially acknowledged sites are beautiful, moving, and historically rich. But for those who know that the Vatican's underground is far larger than these curated glimpses, the tours raise more questions than they answer. The contrast between the polished public areas and the locked, shadowed corridors is striking. It leaves one to wonder what lies down the paths that are never mentioned, the chambers whose doors remain shut. If the Vatican admits to only a fraction of its underground world, then the rest, whatever it may be, remains in deliberate silence. And perhaps that silence is exactly the point. By showing just enough to satisfy curiosity, the deeper secrets can remain buried, safe from prying eyes, waiting in the dark for another century to pass. Ask Vatican officials about the stranger stories surrounding their underground, and they will respond with polite but firm dismissal. Tales of endless tunnels, secret chambers, and forbidden relics are labelled as nothing more than myth, the product of overactive imaginations and conspiracy theorists. According to the official stance, there are no hidden corridors leading to ancient temples, no locked vaults filled with lost artifacts, and certainly no shadowy rooms used for mysterious rituals. The message is simple. What you have been told is fiction. Yet, the persistence of these stories is hard to ignore. For centuries, travellers, workers, and even members of the clergy have claimed to see or hear things that do not fit the neat, official version of events. There are accounts of narrow staircases plunging deeper than the public tours go, of bricked-over archways that clearly once led somewhere, and of guards stationed in places that seem to have no obvious importance. Still, each time these stories surface, the Vatican insists there is nothing to them. One of the most commonly denied claims is the existence of an underground route stretching from the Vatican to the Colosseum, a relic of ancient Rome repurposed during the early days of Christianity. Another is the so-called Hall of Relics, a chamber supposedly filled with sacred items from across the world, including objects tied to biblical events. The Vatican calls both stories pure invention, despite the fact that similar tales appear in sources separated by centuries and continents. The same dismissal is applied to reports of deep water tunnels connecting directly to the Tiber, or chambers so old they predate St. Peter's Basilica itself. According to the official position, these either never existed or have been hopelessly exaggerated. In their version, there are no undiscovered burial chambers, no sealed crypts of long-forgotten popes, and certainly no pagan shrines entombed beneath layers of Christian stone. Part of the reason these denials feed public curiosity is the Vatican's long tradition of secrecy. It is an institution built on layers of tradition, guarded knowledge, and controlled narratives. Even when it has nothing to hide, the Church often chooses not to reveal everything, and in doing so, it creates the perfect environment for speculation. If someone insists a certain tunnel exists and the Vatican says it does not, the lack of transparency only fuels the suspicion that the truth is being withheld. Whether these underground places are real or imagined, the fact that they are so firmly denied adds to their allure. The idea that there could be something extraordinary hidden just beyond reach is irresistible. The more the Vatican dismisses these stories as myth, the more people wonder if perhaps the myths are where the truth has been hiding all along. In a city layered with history, where every stone seems to hold a secret, it is hard not to believe that somewhere in the dark, beyond the places we are allowed to see, the things they deny might still be waiting. For as long as the Vatican has stood, secrecy has been as much a part of its foundation as stone and mortar. The question that lingers is why? Why keep so much hidden for so many centuries? The most obvious reason is security. If there are artifacts of immense historical or spiritual value beneath those floors, revealing their exact location could make them targets for thieves, extremists, or even governments. Protecting them means not only locking them away, but making sure the world never even knows where to look. But security is only part of the answer. Some suggest the secrecy serves to preserve faith itself. Certain discoveries, whether they are ancient texts, artifacts, or structures, could challenge long-held beliefs or official church narratives. If an inscription or relic raised uncomfortable questions about the origins of doctrine, revealing it could cause confusion or even crisis among the faithful. In that sense, keeping such things hidden is seen as a way to protect unity, even if it means sacrificing transparency. There is also the weight of tradition. The Vatican is an institution that moves slowly, guarding rituals and customs passed down for centuries. Many of its leaders see themselves as stewards of a trust that began long before they were born and will continue long after they are gone. In their eyes, the underground is not a museum for the curious, but a sacred space where the past must be preserved exactly as it is, free from outside interference. Some theories reach beyond the practical and into the realm of prophecy. Throughout history, there have been whispers of predictions contained in ancient scrolls or hidden inscriptions that speak of events yet to come, wars, disasters, even the end of the church itself. If such prophecies exist, they could be seen as too dangerous to release, especially if their timing or interpretation is uncertain. Better, perhaps, to leave them in darkness until the moment comes when they must be revealed. Another reason could be control. Knowledge is power, and the Vatican has long understood that controlling what people know is a way of shaping how they think. By deciding what is shown and what is concealed, the Church can guide the narrative, ensuring that its version of history remains the one that is told. This control is not always about deception. Sometimes it is about focus, keeping attention on the aspects of faith that inspire and unite, rather than those that might divide. Whether one sees these reasons as wise caution or calculated secrecy depends largely on perspective. To some, the Vatican's hidden world is a symbol of guardianship, a necessary shield for treasures too valuable to risk. To others, it is a sign of an institution unwilling to trust the people with the whole truth. Either way, the secrecy works. The tunnels remain closed, the chambers locked, and the questions unanswered. And as long as the answers stay buried, the reasons, whether security, prophecy, or something else entirely, will remain part of the mystery itself. Deep within the maze of passages under the Vatican, there is a story about a door unlike any other. It is said to be made of heavy bronze, its surface darkened with age, but still gleaming faintly in the glow of a torch or lamp. The hinges are massive, the lock intricate, and no one alive claims to have seen what lies beyond it. This is the last unopened gate, a portal that no living pope has dared to unbar. The origins of the gate are a mystery in themselves. Some say it was forged in the early days of the church, cast from bronze taken from a pagan temple as a sign of victory over the old gods. Others insist it is far older, a remnant from the Roman Empire, once sealing an imperial vault before being claimed by the church. Whatever its beginnings, it now sits in the deepest, most forbidden layer of the underground, at the end of a narrow, twisting corridor that is rarely walked. The few who have been close enough to see it describe strange markings etched into the metal, some resembling Latin, others far more ancient and unfamiliar. They say the air near the gate feels heavier, as if the space itself resists intruders. The lock, an elaborate mechanism of interlocking gears and plates, appears to require not just a key, but a precise sequence of actions to release. It is a design meant to deter not only thieves, but anyone who might stumble upon it without full understanding of what it guards. The Vatican's official stance on such a gate is silence. Guides and historians either deny it exists or politely redirect the conversation. But among the whispers in Rome, there are countless theories about what could be sealed behind it. Some believe it hides a chamber filled with dangerous relics, objects of such power that they must remain sealed away forever. Others say it is a tomb, holding the remains of someone whose identity could change history. There are even those who claim it is not a door to a room at all, but to a passage that descends even deeper, into a place the church has sworn never to enter. The most chilling version of the story ties the gate to a prophecy. According to this tale, the door will be opened only in a time of great crisis for the Church, when a final choice must be made. What waits beyond is said to be both a gift and a curse, capable of saving or destroying, depending on how it is used. Perhaps that is why no pope, no matter how curious or brave, has risked turning the key. Until the day comes when the gate swings open, it will remain a symbol of the Vatican's deepest mysteries, an object of fear, fascination, and endless speculation. Somewhere beneath the marble floors walked by millions, the last unopened gate waits in silence, its secrets locked in bronze, untouched for centuries. Beneath the heart of the Vatican, past the catacombs, tourists can walk, and the locked doors only a handful of people can open. There is a world no one outside the highest circles will ever truly know. It stretches down into darkness, layer upon layer of stone and earth, hiding centuries of secrets. Some of these secrets are almost certainly mundane: unused storage rooms, crumbling walls, and forgotten maintenance corridors. But others may be far more extraordinary, the kind of discoveries that could reshape how we understand history, faith, and the Vatican itself. We know the underground is vast because even the fraction shown to the public is enough to feel endless. The Scavi tours reveal ancient Roman streets and tombs preserved under the basilica. The official catacombs display frescoes painted by early Christians. But even here, the routes are carefully chosen, the lights perfectly placed, and the gates firmly locked where the paths turn away into unlit passages. Those untravelled corridors seem to whisper that there is much more hidden from view. It is easy to imagine what might be concealed beyond those locked gates. Perhaps there are chambers filled with relics too controversial to display, or archives holding books that contradict accepted history. There might be shrines built long before Christianity reached Rome, still standing in the shadows. Maybe there are tunnels that lead far beyond the Vatican's walls, connecting to forgotten catacombs, secret escape routes, or even places that no longer exist above ground. Part of the mystery comes from the Vatican's own silence. Officials do not often speak of the areas they do not show, and when they do, their answers are vague. This silence feeds curiosity. It allows imagination to fill the gaps with stories of treasure vaults, prophetic scrolls, and forbidden knowledge. Whether those stories are true almost doesn't matter. The not knowing is what keeps them alive. Some believe the deepest levels may never have been fully explored even by the Vatican itself. The underground is ancient, older than the church, and parts of it may be unstable or flooded. There could be sections sealed for safety, their contents left untouched for hundreds or even thousands of years. In that sense, the Vatican's decision not to open them could be as much about preservation as secrecy. But the fact remains that most of what lies beneath the Vatican will remain beyond our reach. We can stand in the basilica above, we can walk the narrow passageways they allow us to see, but the true depths will remain unseen, their secrets known only to a select few who may never speak of them. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all, not what is hidden, but the certainty that we will never know. And so the Vatican's stone heart continues to beat above a darkness we can only imagine. A place where history sleeps, waiting for a future that may never come.